Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 38. And I know we covered The Walking Dead a couple of months ago when we did our listener poll selected episode on The Governor, which I know, Doc, came as a little bit of a surprise to you.
Right. I remember thinking everyone's going to pick Negan, right? Because that's the only character you're supposed to pick.
You were adamant on him, and yet our listeners chose The Governor.
Right. And I got over it, and I made sure I didn't throw a temper tantrum and quit doing the podcast. And I thought the episode went pretty well. Well,
you threatened it, but you stuck with it, and I'm proud of it. And I don't know if I could say this, or I mean, we've been friends for a long time, and you trust me, right? And there's that kinship there, and I view you like a brother. So I feel it's comfortable. Like, you're not really going to get mad at me if I say that you're my Negan. Can I say that?
No, you can't. Not in the slightest. As a matter of fact, I think that's the worst insult anyone has ever said to me, and people have said some bad things.
I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, I know exactly where I'm going to go with this intro. And I wanted to lead up to it because I can see the look on your face. You're like, where is he going with this? Wow.
If anyone ever calls you their Negan, then either one or both of those people need help. That's just wrong, man.
But we've been friends for a long time. I feel like it's okay. Like, I can call you my Negan. Like, you're not going to get mad at me.
Oh, wow. I have to re-examine this entire friendship. Thanks. But that's okay, because once again, I'll remain a professional, and we're going to get through this podcast.
Was it because I used the hard G? Is it okay if I said you're my Negan and made it a soft?
I swear to you, I don't condone violence, and yet I am going to smash this microphone over your head so hard.
I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I had to. It was funny.
Yes, it was. And I stand by my threat.
Fair enough. We want to give a quick thank you so much to our latest patron, the Phantom Zone. I know last episode we gave them a shout out. Well, they subscribed. So thank you guys so much. You guys are fantastic. And we look forward to possibly working together with you guys. Maybe we could do a crossover. Hint, hint.
Amen
hint,
to
nudge,
that.
nudge. We're always looking for podcasts that we can hook up with in some way, shape, or form. Also, this week we want to give a shout out to Christian and Damon's Amazing Nerd podcast at amazingnerdshow.podbean.com. Just to give you all a heads up, this is a very not safe for work language podcast. I know we tend to be family friendly, although this episode, certainly the skit, I'm going to be leaning heavily on the censor button.
Yeah. This is one, be very careful. Listener discretion advised.
Absolutely. But if you're a patron, if you are a patron at the $5 level or above, you get the uncensored version. And there is a substantial amount of profanity in this one. This one far outreaches even the Deadpool episode.
And that's very difficult to do.
Yeah, I think this one contains more profanity than Deadpool, Jessica Jones, and pretty much every other skit that we've done combined. But if you know anything about Negan, the character, you're really not that surprised.
Correct. And we'll get into that.
So Negan from The Walking Dead, created by Robert Kirkman and Charlie Adlard in The Walking Dead number 100 from July of 2012. Negan was introduced as the leader of the Saviors, a group of survivors living near Alexandria in a compound called the Sanctuary. And Negan rules over the group with an iron fist and a barbed-wire-wrapped baseball bat named Lucille.
The Saviors, the Sanctuary. I don't need a degree to see what they were going for with that.
And there's an actual character not of the Saviors called Jesus.
Right.
So there's a lot of religious iconography and terminology being used here. But interestingly, Negan, we find out in other portions of the Walking Dead mythology that Lucille was the name of his wife, who Negan had to abandon when the zombie apocalypse started. She was in a hospital, she died, and then reanimated. And he also had a mistress on the side.
So somehow he still considered his wife to be important enough to name the bat after her. What was the name of the mistress? And what would he name after her?
That's an excellent question. I don't remember the mistress's name because I didn't read that particular story. I don't know if the mistress ever even had a name.
That's what I'm saying. I don't remember it, but I just wonder in terms of importance. He had to make sure the bat was named Lucille. And there's another reference to Lucille too, but I'm not getting into that right this moment.
Here's some money. Go buy a Star War.
Nice.
I can't help it. So he and his men capture Rick, Carl, Glenn, Maggie, Sophia, Michonne, and Heath, and he brutally murders Glenn after selecting him with the worst game of eeny-meeny-miny-mo ever played.
And it's one that I think has now hit total pop culture because of the Walking Dead TV series, where they left it as a cliffhanger. And if you haven't seen that, I don't want to spoil it for you. It doesn't quite go the same way, and then it does go the same way. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Negan on the show, and I have not seen much of The Walking Dead, but the clips that I have seen with Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he really encapsulates who Negan is in the books. He just has an amazing swagger and charisma about him, which Negan absolutely does. And yet there's that sadistic side to him that carries through, and it's fun to watch, frankly. But that's the show. We're talking about the comics. So he takes a liking to Carl, Rick Grimes' son, after Carl sneaks into the camp and murders several of Negan's men with a machine gun. And then he brings him into the room and he makes Carl take off the bandage because Carl's missing an eye because he got shot through it. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but the interactions between Negan and Carl are very interesting. And frankly, some of my favorite moments in the Walking Dead comic series have been between Negan and Carl, because here is Negan, this heartless bastard of a man, frankly, and yet he is so enthralled with Carl, and he respects Carl. He is scared of Carl, as he says at one point, frankly, you scare the blank out of me. It's an interesting dynamic, and it plays out. We'll get into that in a little bit. So it is discovered that Negan rules a harem of sorts with the Savior's wives, who must be loyal to him under the punishment of branding the husband. He takes a red-hot iron, and he just straight up puts it on the side of your face. Ask Dwight how that worked out for him.
Yeah, that didn't go well at all.
No. So he goads Rick into a standoff, which results in several Saviors dying and Lucille getting damaged, which he did not take well. Negan does escape, but he tells his people that they will go to war with Rick's group. And I apologize, by the way, if you're not really that familiar with The Walking Dead, you don't know who some of these people are, you can go back and listen to our Governor episode to get some of the backstory on this, because Negan and his interaction and his storyline happens well after the Governor.
Right.
Without bogging down too much into the details, there's several camps of survivors, and they are competing for resources amongst each other and amidst the zombie apocalypse. I apologize. I probably should have started that earlier. But if you're listening to this episode, you have at least some passing knowledge, I think, with The Walking Dead, and you understand that it's all about, well, zombies. So you understand that these people are trying to...
Zombies? What word is that? You mean the walkers?
Oh, geez. Yes. Yes, okay. I know. They never refer to them as zombies in the show because no zombie media ever actually calls them zombies.
Who started that? I don't understand that. I never have, and I never will. Okay. I don't understand why that's a taboo, because it seems that way. Like they go out of their way never to mention that term.
Well, because the thing is that the vast majority of the time when you're dealing with zombie media, zombies don't exist outside of this event. So this is always the first time that people are experiencing the undead phenomenon. So therefore, they don't really know what to call them. So they call them walkers. They call them undead. They call them roamers, ramblers, whatever.
but that doesn't change the logic. It doesn't mean that you have to create a different word for something each time you have your iteration of what's called a random, unexpected event. By that logic, we shouldn't be using the term bomb in any media if they haven't had one explode. They would use different words. They could create their own language. That's true for anything. Why is that specific to zombies? I apologize for the tangent here, but that is something that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. So the fact that it was brought up like that by me was intentional.
I apologize, Doc. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't. So Negan captures Gregory, who's the leader of the Hilltop Colony, another rival of sorts organization, and he gains the loyalty of the Hilltop Colony because he has their leader captured. And this happens after the standoff with Rick, and he uses this as leverage against Rick and his group. But Holly, another member of Rick's compound, drives a car through the fence of the sanctuary, and this brings a herd of hundreds of walkers into the compound. And so now Negan and his group have to spend all their time focusing on fighting off all of the walkers as opposed to going after Rick and the humans. So they eventually dispatch all the walkers, and then Negan arrives at Alexandria, where he uses grenades to begin destroying houses in Rick's compound before retreating.
I have to say, when I first read this through as it was happening, I thought that was going to be the end of it. You destroy a compound and walkers come flooding in. Up until this point, that was usually the sign we're going to move on to a different arc. And the fact that they took care of business and came back harder, I think was really impressive because it gave a lot of credence to Negan as a boss. In other words, he didn't just talk about it, he brought it, and he kept bringing it, and he would bring it to his last breath.
Yes. Usually if the walkers overran a compound, that typically meant throughout the history of the book that we weren't going to see these people anymore. They weren't really going to be thought of, that they weren't going to be a threat, but not Negan. No, sir. So he comes back and he is angry. So he then launches an assault on the Hilltop Colony where he wants a showdown with Rick. During the fight, Rick is hit with an arrow that Negan thinks is covered in zombie guts because, side note, Dwight is basically his second in command. Dwight, his wife, whose name I don't remember, Sandra, maybe? She was Negan's first concubine, as it were, and he acts very loyal to Negan, but Dwight has secretly been cooperating with Rick and the other communities to take over Negan and take him down. And so Negan says, let's cover our weapons in zombie guts because even if they don't die, if they get hit with them, it will give them fever and they will eventually die and then reanimate. And that's how you kill them from inside. So he tells Dwight, cover your arrows in zombie guts. And he sees an arrow hit Rick. And he assumes, all right, that's it. Rick has been taken down because Negan's thought is, I will take down Rick and then everybody else will fall into line because I just have to take out the leader. Well, Dwight didn't actually cover the arrow in zombie guts because Dwight has been in cahoots with Rick the whole time. And so he turns on, he does a heel face turn, if you will. If you want to use some wrestling terminology, he does a face turn. So he does hit Rick with an arrow, but it's not lethal. And this sort of surprises Negan. And then Negan has a sort of an epiphany during a discussion with Rick, and he realizes that Rick has been right all along, and his methods have not helped the survivors that he thinks he's helping. Well, Rick slits his throat, but he doesn't kill him. And he captures him and leaves him in a jail cell. So then there's a time jump, and it's like 2 years later, and we see Carl going and talking to this person who we don't know, and it turns out to be Negan, and it's revealed that Carl has been making regular, frequent trips to the jail cell to converse with Negan. So they are friends, even though Carl still wants to kill him.
Right.
For everything that he did. He does not forget what Negan did to get him to this spot in the first place. He is willing to converse with him, but he still wants to kill him. But he won't, which I think is a testament to Carl's strength.
Well, I think he also has that example from Rick. Rick definitely wanted some level of vengeance and acted out the way it was portrayed, I think impulsively, but was able to rein it in. He had every intention, in my opinion, I am not claiming that this is canon. In my opinion, he had every intention of killing Negan, and at the last moment, because of who he is and the motivations he has, he decides not to and lets it go. Carl, very similarly, has a lot of reasons to harbor something against Negan, but also has to respect his direct experience with the man that he didn't kill him when he had every right to. So, turnabout's fair play, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a little bit. But like I mentioned earlier, Negan's relationship with Carl is very interesting because Negan returns Carl to Rick unharmed. And Negan basically says, look at this. I love the way he does it because he says, wait until you see what I did to your son. Rick attacks him because he assumes that Negan hurt Carl, because at this point we've been shown no reason to trust Negan or that Negan is anything less than a scummy person. And Rick attacks Negan. Negan, of course, gets the upper hand and has Rick at gunpoint. And then he brings Carl out to show him, I did nothing to your son, and I knew you would react that way, and you just proved my point. Negan is nothing else if not a cunning son of a 66.
There's actually a term for that, what he just did. Projective identification. He knew ahead of time that Rick was his enemy, and therefore his enemy is going to think that he's doing nothing but bad things. And because of that, he's going to give his enemy the opportunity to show that he thinks he's doing bad things. And it played out exactly the way he wanted. The problem, of course, is you, SOB, you just messed with another person's emotions intentionally. Usually it's not intentional. We're talking about relationships where people are doing this subconsciously. He did it on purpose. That is brutal.
Yeah. I mean, you got to give him credit. It's brilliant. But from a strategic standpoint, it's brilliant. It's a also very, very messed up thing to do, and you should totally not do this.
Correct.
So back to Negan. He's released by Brandon, who's a member of the community who doesn't really trust Rick and wants to see Rick and his leadership subverted. And they infiltrate the Whisperers, which is another rival community. Negan kills Brandon and then goes on to the Whisperers by himself. He gets the leader, Alpha, to trust him before he kills her and decapitates her. And then he brings Alpha's head to Rick as a gesture of goodwill. And he says, look, I've been in jail a long time. I'm not the person that I was. You should trust me because I just took out the leader of the people you've been fighting with. Doesn't this prove that I'm on your side? Rick doesn't fully trust him, but he does give him some measure of freedom and uses him as a soldier against the Whisperers. And then he says, I'm not going to confine you anymore in the jail cell. I'm going to give you food and supplies, and you go get your own outpost. You can't stay here with us, but I won't kill you. You can go and see if you can survive on your own. And we haven't seen or heard from Negan since then.
That's almost biblical, almost like Cain being sent out to the east of Eden.
Ooh, I like it. I like the reference.
Just a thought off the top of my head. Did not have that planned.
No, that's excellent. And I think it's very indicative of some of going back to what we were saying earlier with some of the religious themes and the methodology and the iconography. So moving into the issues, the first thing I want to talk about, Negan is very misogynistic, but not in a violent manner. One of the main rules in the sanctuary amongst the saviors is we don't rape. He stops one of his men from raping another woman. He says repeatedly that all of the women that are his wives are there voluntarily. And I put that in quotes because there's definitely some psychological manipulation going on, but he never outright abuses them. He did have a mistress before everything went down. So he's not exactly the most faithful man when it comes to female relationships, and he doesn't view them with a level of trust and respect. He doesn't have a very high opinion of women, but he's not willing to physically harm them because he understands that by and large, aside from like Michonne and a couple of other women, that he can just physically overpower them. And I don't think, as horrible as it is to say, I don't think that's fun for him.
Okay.
So, Doc, if you want to unpack that just a little bit.
Negan clearly has the ability to charm himself into relationships, not just sexual or physical, but actual friendships. And that's shown multiple times throughout the comic run. The idea, though, related to his inability to have a respect for women outside of their sexuality is fascinating. One of the lines was, the best way through a man is through his vagina. That's the terminology that he used. And the reference is not that men below him are effeminate. That's not the case. He's saying that if a man has a relationship with a woman and they are usually married or in a long-term relationship, that if you want to manipulate the man to do what you want, you have to establish a relationship with his wife or his partner. The fact that he is already thinking of that ahead of time indicates that he has the mindset that any union is not necessarily worthy of exclusivity. And I'm not trying to bag on open relationships or anything of the sort. All I'm saying is, if other people besides you have established that they have boundaries, you don't have the right to interject yourself, even if you think your talents, your personality traits, your abilities are a much better match for that person. There are examples where people are in relationships and you've seen it and you think, I don't know if that's going to last, or I think they're going to have problems in some area of their life. That doesn't give you the right to break it up, so to speak. So Negan has created this caste system where, because he has a position of power, he allows himself to interact with anybody on any level, especially females, and interject that level of power regardless of if they wanted it to happen or not. So no, he doesn't physically rape them, and it's not an issue of direct domestic violence, but he's planting the seeds of discontent. If a person in a relationship thinks that the other person is less interested, they may have a conversation about it. But many times, especially under stressful situations, and I think we'd all agree a zombie apocalypse would be a stressful situation, spouses can often start triaging what needs to be considered important at what given time. And in that case, there's a guy that's kind of flirting but not doing anything is less important than I need to make sure that I don't get bitten by a zombie. And when that level of triage happens over a period of time, very well, the person that's actually putting effort and energy into, even if it's an unwanted relationship, is going to end up potentially having more success than the other side that is dealing with the lower base practical nature of things, but isn't putting in as much effort into the relationship. So naturally, one side is going to win out over the other, depending on the circumstances. Negan has done some very horrible things, but he also has shown that he can be very compassionate to someone that he cares about. And if he cares about these women, then he can show them the type of compassion that someone who he has already made a subordinate and is doing a lot of other things that aren't exactly glamorous and making them look bad to their own spouse. So it just creates this cycle where he gets to feed into his system all the things that are great about himself and why people would ingratiate themselves towards him, and make sure that his subordinates are always kept out of the fray, but surviving. And also we know what the challenges are to even changing the dynamic. They get burned. I mean, we use that term when it comes to relationships, but not like this.
Yeah, that's the thing. He definitely turns the men in the sanctuary into almost cuckolds, if you will. He's cuckolding, but as the third party, that he's debasing the men and then saying to the women, look how great I am. You should want to be with me. because if you come with me, if you submit yourself as my wife, you get all of these privileges. There's a point system that's apparently involved, and you don't have to work anymore. And he makes them parade around in their underwear. He very much enjoys having the sexual power. He doesn't beat them. He doesn't rape them. But in all other forms, this is definitely an abusive relationship. But he definitely cuckolds the other men in the sanctuary for the women that he chooses to be with him.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a fantastic description. That was the term that I was thinking of. And as you said it, I realized that's it. That's the word. Usually, though, those types of relationships, it would be the other partner that is, for the most part, the lead in that, or one of the partners. The person wants to be dominated. They want to live out that masochistic fantasy. It's rare that a complete outside party is the one leading it.
Yeah, exactly. Usually the cuckolds approached the bull, so to speak, to use the terminology within, not the bull saying, I'm going to dominate your wife and you're going to watch and enjoy it, or not, as the case may be.
Right.
So moving into the next thing is, we mentioned that he abhors sexual violence. Otherwise, Negan is a very almost obscenely violent man. He enjoys beating on individuals that he deems to have broken the rules. He has a very perverse relationship with Lucille, which is absolutely, from a male power standpoint, like just Freud would have a field day with the representation as a phallus and the symbolism, an extension of his penis. There is very clear symbolism here, and he refers to the fact that when Lucille is beating on people, that this makes him excited, that he gets an erection from this. Lucille is said, that he says that if she has a vagina, he would have sex with it. So there's a whole really messed up situation. There's a lot to unfold here. Doc, just go for it.
It's amazing because you stole my thunder, not intentionally. I don't mean that in a negative way. Violence and sex can unfortunately be intermingled. Clearly, he doesn't want to do that with females. He has no problem doing that with males or with people that he considers to be aggressors. In other words, I think he would have no problem attacking females in general, as long as you didn't say it was about sex. But his terms for masculinity and how he likes to debase most of the men that he comes in contact with easily trump anything else that he wants to do in life. He didn't want the power of having the sanctuary and leading the saviors because he wanted to save them, although that's what he commonly says is his goal. He wanted it because having control of the rules allowed him to attack anyone for any reason. Sometimes I've mentioned on the blog, especially, the idea of catharsis, that if you have impulses that you don't know any other healthy way to get out, find the proper environment and let loose a little bit under certain circumstances. Make sure that it's limited in time and scope. Guess what Negan has in a zombie apocalypse? He has all the time in the world and no limitations of scope. So he can have a field day. I find it fascinating that of all the things to pick, it was a baseball bat because, well, I apologize. Not just a baseball bat. A baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire.
Yeah, this is some Sabu ECW type stuff, like Tommy Dreamer, Sandman level. Let's just take the weapons and wrap them in barbed wire and, beat Terry Funk with them. That's what this is to me. EC dub. Sorry.
I think the choice Honestly, not just for Negan, but anytime we think of weapons like that, or we think of barbed wire, the problem is not that they're dangerous. For example, a baseball bat can hit you with blunt damage. Barbed wire cuts. We get that. The problem is barbed wire embeds itself in flesh and requires force to be ripped out. And if you want to use it again and again, you're removing parts of the person. It's not just doing temporary damage. It's doing lasting damage that is going to leave very visible scars that the person, depending on when they were hit, is going to have to explain. Or they simply won't survive. But the type of death that they have is excruciating, and it's incredibly visible. So it's not just that he's hurting people. It's not just that he's killing people. It's that he's putting on a show with it. So you have the impulse to act against others. You have the impulse to fantasize sexually about it. And you have the showmanship of it. Combine all of those and place it in a position of power. I think you have one of the most intimidating characters you can get without a superpower. That's how badass I think Negan is. He's able to do it from a mental standpoint with people that he doesn't want to touch, and he's able to unleash the other side from a physical standpoint and bask in the glory of it. This man gets to act out everything in every facet of his life and do it with the final layer for the good of other people. Are you kidding me? What else is he going to think about? What does he have to change? What does he have to adapt to? There's no need for growth. There's no need for discussion. There's no need for debate. He's got it all. Or he thinks he does. Until he's challenged about it. But
he doesn't like that.
No.
So that segues very nicely into the last issue, which is he has a very unique honor system. And that is something that, from a psychological standpoint, I think separates him from a lot of the other characters, the other, I guess, bad guys, quote unquote, in the Walking Dead universe, the other leaders of rival tribes and so on, certainly as compared to the governor. He does have this honor system where I think it stems from the manipulation, but also it comes from a scarcity mindset. And this is something that I know you'd mentioned when we were prepping this, the notion that if you have it, I don't, and therefore I need it because I need it for my people, quote unquote, for my people. How sincere that is, I don't know. But we see the way that he treats Carl. And again, the interactions with Carl, he makes him remove the bandage when he first gets there. He makes him remove the bandage and he looks at the eye and he's fascinated by it. And he's like, oh, my God, can I touch it? And Carl, who to this point, to his credit, has been very, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to kill you, et cetera, et cetera. This makes Carl break down and cry. And Negan immediately backpedals. He's like, oh, I am sorry. I didn't know, I didn't want to upset you. I don't know how much of that is psychological manipulation, how much of that is sincere. He doesn't always realize the impact that his words have on others. But I think at least as far as kids are concerned, he has a little different mindset that he's not really going to try and manipulate children or innocents. I'll put it that way. I think that's the key difference. He doesn't go after innocents, but he also recognizes that Carl is not innocent and he respects that. But by the same token, he's afraid of it. There's a lot to unpack there. But if you could, I don't know what you want to say about his honor system, so to speak, that, again, he doesn't rape. He respects Carl. He does these things. How much of it is out of manipulation and how much of this is out of some warped internal code?
That's a great description of it. I was going to say it's cultural customization. He's allowed to shape society how he wants, and therefore there's only one real creed that anybody needs to know, and it's because Negan says so. You don't need to know the details of why or how he came to the conclusions that he has about the rules for the sanctuary, but you darn well better respect him if you want to live. Fair enough. You mentioned the innocence. I think that does play a huge role in it. We have no knowledge of specifically where the cutoff is. In other words, I don't think he has people show their ID indicating how old they are before they can get branded or get their face crushed in. But you'd like to think if he sees a newborn infant, he won't do anything. But if it's someone that outwardly attacks him, he'll probably have some sort of limitation on them. The problem comes in because he knows the rules better than anyone else. And I personally don't think he ever codifies it in a way that people can understand. He knows it very well. Others outside of it don't. And other people are slow to pick up on it because it's so debased. It's so barbaric. So when he interacts with someone like Rick or anyone affiliated with him or any other faction, it's out of left field. They don't know how to approach it, but he expects everyone to know how to approach it because it's his rules. He can't see outside of that. There's no other set of rules that would work in this circumstance, and therefore, how could anybody come to any other conclusion? It's beyond him, despite the fact that there's evidence otherwise. So he ends up using the excuse that the world around him is collapsing, and therefore, because he has a system in place and that system still exists, it's the best system possible for everyone that's around.
It's a tautology.
Exactly. So
my system works because it's my system.
Yep. That's all anyone needs to know. Once again, if that's the case, we've noticed that he doesn't really have massive layers of his hierarchy. There is a hierarchy, but it's not like a military system of ranks through 14 levels or whatever. It's basically the people that are super close to you, the people you get to have sex with, and everybody else. It's a huge drop. So when you talk about the idea that you have to take care of everybody else, let's be realistic. Who does he want to actually care for? He wants to care for himself. He wants to care for the people that are close to him. He wants to care for his wives. Does he really want to care about or care for any of the other people that are so far beneath him? I don't think there's evidence of that other than they are alive.
Other than they're alive and I need them to continue doing the stuff for the community so that I can continue to rule.
Correct.
It's a utilitarian mindset to the extreme.
Right. And in theory, he's willing to incorporate anyone else that wants to enter that system. However, this isn't a rank and file hierarchy where you can advance very much. If he picks you out, and more than likely if he's picking you out, it's because you did something spectacular. So I guess there is some part of a meritocracy there, but it's usually going to be in some perverse way, like what he did with Carl. You get the honor of having me interested in your deformed eye. You get the honor of being my right-hand man to make sure that everything gets covered in zombie guts. You get the honor to have sex with me. That's it. If you don't fit in any of those categories, you get to come in and hear how great I am. That's it.
And work for me and give me half your stuff.
Well, hey.
And I let you live.
Hey, what do you expect? It's his way. There is no other way. That's it.
Yeah. It's literally my way or the highway.
I guess what really disturbs me about it is the second that anybody that was considered a leader interacted with him, he didn't approach it from the idea that they could join up. He didn't approach it from the idea that he could learn from them. They were an immediate threat. And he needed to remove any sense of power they had by asking for all of their stuff. That doesn't work very often unless you have a show of force behind it. Clearly, he had a show of force, and he used it as an excuse once again to let out all of his aggression. But the idea that nobody else, despite the fact that they're also alive, is worth listening to is ultimately his downfall. And the fact that he was willing to acknowledge that is what allowed him ultimately to survive beyond a point that he had no business surviving. He was dead to rights, literally dead to rights, cut, done. But because the other people that were around him made a conscious decision to look at things in a slightly different way, he ends up alive.
Yeah, Rick said to him, "You are the stupidest effing person still alive," after he has him beat because of his obstinance and the fact that he refuses to acknowledge that there could be another way and that Rick represents that other, better way.
Even if it weren't better, just the fact that it was different, Negan takes that as a loss. And we know how someone who's so focused on aggression, what they think of a loss. That's not a loss. That's almost the equivalent of death.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And they don't respond well to those.
Yeah.
Moving into treatment. This is, like we did with the governor, it's very difficult to go to an in-universe treatment option because if you are surrounded by zombies and your primary focus is survival, which, to Negan's credit, he understands, you're not really going to be too keen on sitting down with a mental health professional and trying to get better. It's about, can you help me live? But in universe, to the extent that you can, and without repeating too much of what you said about the governor, have at it, Doc.
I thought about this ahead of time. With the governor,
I'm sure you did.
With the governor, I pointed out that I would do my best to try and ingratiate myself into his system and become one of his lieutenants, thereby gaining access to how he thinks overall, and slowly over time seeing if I could help him make adjustments that are better for society at large and also for himself. I would not dare do that with Negan because the risk compared to the governor, to be honest with you, is far greater because at least with the governor, it would be fairly swift. Hey, you're betraying me. I'm going to kill you and you're done. Okay. As opposed to Negan potentially coming up with something else that's way more brutal, lasts a little bit longer, hurts a lot more, incredibly agonizing. I don't want to go through that. And he doesn't have the type of system that would allow me to just kind of work my way in slowly and learn the nuance, because there really isn't nuance. And I can't, well, I guess I could, but I wouldn't change my gender and try and seduce him. So what I would have to do, I think, would be trying to establish treatment with Dwight or establish treatment with Carl, because especially Carl would work because I think he could respect a young man going through a lot, might need someone else to talk to. He may not like it, but I think he could understand the concept and let it go for a little while. And this is where this gets incredibly manipulative, and I do not recommend anybody else do this in real life. This is why this is a in-universe comic fantasy. I would do my best to have Carl as a true psychological mole. I don't need him to be a professional therapist, but I do need him to be what I would call peer support, and that is something that's real. A peer support person is someone who has acknowledged the diagnosis of some mental health condition, and while they've been working through it, they found such benefit and found such structure that they want to continue to help others who have had similar experiences, and they actually make it a part of their occupation. Our hospital system, the one that I work for, actually has peer support in multiple facets, and I can tell you, it does wonders. Because having someone that has something much more relatable personally, as opposed to a outside professional saying something, can be infinitely more powerful. So if I could establish that with someone like Carl or Dwight, I think the greater candidate is Carl, because of the direct history of how he was able to get to Negan in the first place. I think we could see a little bit of change that way, because I think Carl could have those types of conversations without an immediate backlash. And there is the slight chance that Negan would have an improvement way faster than what we saw in the comics.
Interesting. So Carl would be your inside man.
Yep.
Huh. All right. Now, out of universe, I don't know where you would begin to draw a corollary to a real life individual. Suffice to say that I think this person would probably be under some form of law enforcement observation. I know that you work in an emergency unit and you have seen a lot of very dangerous individuals. So I am going to assume that you have some form of real life experience firsthand that you can draw upon.
Allow me to say that any person that exhibits that level of violence, whether it was calculated or in an altered mindset, safety remains the number one problem. So the first thing is making sure all of the people around that individual are safe. At times, we've had to have whole units in the emergency room empty except for that one person, because we established it was safer for that one individual to be inefficiently in one section of an emergency room than to risk having anyone else around them at the given time.
Wow.
I can tell you, I've seen patients act out. I can tell you that patients have told us when they would act out. Those are the best situations because we're able to act before anyone gets hurt. I am not going to be ashamed to say that we look towards medication to at least let them calm down, let them rest, because the intensely agitated feeling of wanting to act out but can't, and you have no other recourse, can be disturbing for any person. They're actually suffering. It's not enjoyable. I know that it's viewed that way at times for these characters in the comics, but in reality, it's rare that anyone would actually say they relish feeling like they want to be violent and they want to act against another person, unless they think it's a matter of pure vengeance or retaliation or justice or something like that. But most of the time in the ER, that's not how the person's feeling, because we're complete strangers. We didn't do anything directly to them. I'll also say that once that moment is gone and that person has either received medications, unfortunately, occasional restraints, once that period of time is gone, then we do our best to pick up the pieces. We try and establish, now that you've had a time for your, I'll just say it, for your brain to reset, how are you feeling now? And hopefully the person is very honest about it. I would say a majority of the time, people are honest about how they're feeling. If they're still angry, but they feel like they are less angry, or they don't feel that way anymore and they're not even aware of why they felt that way in the first place. I've had people have the opposite reaction and start crying. How on earth could I react that way? Full spectrum. Whatever it is, we adjust accordingly. I can tell you that if it's under the influence of substances, and we can attribute it to substances by evidence of their drug screen, blood work, whatever the case may be, we look then to focus on, is that the primary issue or is that covering something up? If it's a primary substance issue, we refer to the appropriate substance treatment. If it's simply covering up all the other things that are going on in the person's life and they've acted out this violently, then we are going to look at the next level of care. I can almost assure you that most of the time, the next level of care is going to be something significant, such as hospitalization. I say that because I realize the majority of our goal is to avoid hospitalization when possible. But if someone came to my system like this, I can assure you almost any colleague or staff worker would look to see if this person required hospitalization and what their history is of previous treatment. We get many patients that are not exactly adherent to a treatment program, to put it mildly. So we have to keep that in mind as well. But I always say the same thing in those circumstances to patients. I do wish you the best. And whatever the circumstance is, I hope you don't have to go through this again. I try and give the hope that just because you had this one bad experience, that doesn't mean it has to continue. But I'm also realistic because I know I've had patients where I've said that more than once. In any case, as long as the person is able to demonstrate to us that they're going to interact in a calm manner, we treat them accordingly. But if they continue to exhibit a certain level of violence without a sense of repercussion or a sense of safety or security for anyone else, we will also act accordingly. So we're not police. We're not trying to get anyone arrested, but we are trying to make sure that people are safe.
Well, I think that's always the case for what you do. It's safety first in all respects, whether they're exhibiting violent tendencies or not. You're never going to put yourself in a situation where you or any of your colleagues or the patient themselves could come to harm.
I will say, unique to this, there are times where family members will advocate for a person not to be hospitalized, and they'll point out, this is how they've always been. They've always acted this way. We've never had an interaction with mental health before about this. Why on earth would you, for example, put a label? That's something that commonly comes up because we have to at least give a differential diagnosis about what we think is going on with the person. Why do that? Because they're worried about the stigma, and that's understandable. At the same time, I think this is true for just about any other person in society when it comes to circumstances that they didn't expect. I can't do anything about anything that's happened outside of my particular realm. But once you're in my realm, I'm going to give my honest assessment of what's going on. So in other words, if the person never enters the hospital or ever enters the emergency room, you're absolutely right. I can't just randomly walk down the street and say, hey, that person has schizophrenia. Hey, that person has bipolar disorder. Hey, that person has a substance problem. I can't do that. That's unethical and that's not appropriate. But if you're brought to my attention in a professional setting and my job is to make a professional assessment, then it's weird because I have to kind of do the whole sorry, not sorry. I have to be honest with what the assessment is and what the possibilities are for what's going on so that the person can get better. If it turns out to be something that was not preferred, I can't do anything about that. And in healthcare in general, mental health is the only area that has that problem. For example, if you have symptoms such as coughing, sniffing, sneezing, and chest pain, and you take medication and it doesn't go away, I'm usually going to think of an infection. It may be as bad as bronchitis or pneumonia. It may be a simple sinus infection. Or if it's something that has been going on for months and doesn't go away, then I actually have to give the bad idea that maybe it's something different. Maybe it's cancer. No one ever wants to hear that, but that doesn't mean I say, well, that's something you don't like to hear, and therefore I'm not going to investigate it. That would be malpractice. And yet, the number of times patients or family members or friends will say, well, yeah, you can treat them just as long as you don't treat them like they're bipolar. The number of times I hear something like that, I'm like, well, I can't lie if I think that's the actual assessment. So that's something I want people to be aware of. We're not trying to do these things to give horrible labels like a scarlet letter. We're doing this so that people have the knowledge that is necessary for them to live the best lives they can and to deal with things the best way they can under the timeline and circumstances that are appropriate.
And that's one of the reasons why we do this show, to destigmatize mental health and to remove the negative association about the discussions, because as you said, when it comes to mental health, it is very unique in that no one's going to shame you if you are injured with a physical malady and you go see a doctor, but everybody has depression. You just deal with it. We've all been depressed. Everybody, just suck it up and deal with it. Or, no one's going to, if you have a broken leg, just walk it off. Everybody has a broken leg, from time to time.
Well, people say that, but they take it as what it's supposed to be, as a lighthearted joke. They know fully well, if you have a broken leg, like, you're going to get that addressed and you're going to have it fixed. And it's, wow, I'm sorry you have that. The comment I made was clearly a joke, and no one really questions that. But the second that you say something that may or may not indicate some level of mental health concern, now it's a whole Pandora's box, because are you attacking the person, or are you simply pointing out something that you think might be an issue that needs to be addressed?
Precisely. So we here at Capes on the Couch trying to destigmatize mental health, trying to make sure that it is acceptable to say, hey, I have bipolar. Hey, I have anxiety disorder. Hey, I have schizophrenia. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that I am inherently a bad person or that there is something inherently wrong with me. It's something that needs to be addressed and can be fixed. I hate to, but you know what I'm saying? Right. That can be treated by mental health professionals.
Right. And there's another part to this, because someone like Negan, and I've had this come up too. Well, he's clearly a bad person. Why would you even do anything with that? But once again, they're still a person. And at no point, at least in my career, can I take the stance and say, because you are a bad person, you are not worthy of treatment. I don't think that's fair either. Even if the person has something that's been ingrained in them for most of their life, something that we would call a personality disorder, or what they used to be termed as character disorders, we still look to help that person have the best life they can, both for themselves and for the other people that they're going to interact with. That's still the goal. The goal doesn't change. If you really think that a person is a quote unquote bad person, that doesn't mean you don't try. That's something I want people to take away as well. Because someone like Negan, if you've ever had an interaction with someone that you really do think is a Negan, and I promise I won't actually hit Anthony over the head with the microphone for what he said at the start of this, I promise you, at some point and in some glimpses that you may not even ever get to see, you'll find that they can be just as compassionate as Negan was to Carl.
Very, very well said.
Thank you.
So now that we've determined that Negan isn't actually a bad person, he just has a lot going on. Let's unpack that. By the way, and again, I just want to reiterate, because it's something we didn't really mention in the episode proper. Negan has a propensity for foul language, unlike any character that I've read certainly in the Walking Dead universe, and unlike pretty much any other character I've ever read in comics. And so what you are about to hear is authentic Negan language. So listener discretion is advised before we get Negan on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Negan. I'm Dr. Issues.
F*** you.
That's actually not surprising. Where do you go after that?
My foot goes up your f***ing ass, and I go out the f***ing door.
Well, we can avoid spoilers here. That's not happening. So you want to try this a different way?
What, do you want me to apologize? You'd have better luck sucking your own cock.
You know, I've done this dozens of times now, and you're the first person to not even come close to attempting niceties. And if you're this hostile towards me, for once I think we should just jump straight to medication. And before you even ask, I have no idea if it's going to help, but at least I know I'll sleep better.
Is that how you operate? You drug people who challenge you? You can't control me, so you'd rather have me like those f***ing walkers, brainless and docile? You're better than that little piece of shit Rick. He thinks he's so high and mighty. Oh, but how many people has he gotten killed? I protect my people because I give a shit. Oh, and in case you forgot, you.
Interesting. You criticize other people's aggression towards you, and yet all evidence points to their aggression as a response to your initial aggression. So you attack, and someone like me defends. In the case of someone like Rick, ultimately the defender did it better. I'm willing to talk to you about that, and I don't even have to say F*** you back.
I do what I need to for my people. We have rules. The rules keep us alive. I don't like f***ing with people, but they test me, and I have no choice but to keep them in line. I'm really very reasonable as long as you obey the rules.
And those are the best rules you can come up with, huh? How long did it take for you to make those? How many revisions did you do? Whose input did you seek?
Look, Dwight was the one who started the colony. I just made it better. And who can take umbrage with the rule like don't f***ing rape? I think that's a pretty f***ing stand-up thing. All my wives are there voluntarily. I don't f***ing make them f*** me. Who the f*** do you think you are telling me how to run my f***ing compound?
Interesting again. Somehow you think I'm telling you what the right rules are. I'm asking, what's your process? Okay, so any variation or looking under the hood of the engine makes you incredibly squeamish. I wonder why that is.
Because second guessing leads to shit going wrong. We have rules in place to keep people f***ing alive. It's not that hard. You seem to be a pretty f***ing smart guy. It's pretty goddamn basic. Follow the rules and you live. Break them and you get f***ing punished. Do you have kids?
Absolutely.
Then you know you have rules. And if the little shit step out of line, they get punished. I f***ing love kids. And they love me. That little Carl's one scary motherfucker. Have you seen him? I mean, he's missing a whole goddamn eye. You can look right into his f***ing skull. That's pretty f***ing awesome.
Okay, so what kind of punishments do you do with Carl? And I'd like to think you keep the system, with everyone having to follow the same rules instead of playing favorites. You need to keep kids alive, right? You ever put a bat to their skull? You ever burn them? You ever kill them to prove a point?
I came real close. That kid killed a bunch of my f***ing guys. He made me drop Lucille. She doesn't like being on the ground. It's like the flag. It's a f***ing respect thing. And Carl was more useful to me alive because it was leveraged against his f***ing old man. The worst thing I ever did to that kid was make him sing me a goddamn song.
All right, so let's summarize. Follow the rules unless I like you. Get punished unless I like you. Get killed for breaking the rules unless I find another use for you. And by the way, you'll know none of this ahead of time, and I have the option of changing my mind if I feel bad about it. Oh yeah, that's a fantastic way to review your system.
Once again, f*** you.
Okay, I deserve that.
No, really, f*** you.
No, I acknowledge what I said is very harsh and it deserves an angry response. That doesn't mean I have to show you anger back.
What, you think you're better than me? Just because you have the fancy degrees and you're on the other side of this table? You think you're some goddamn self-righteous motherfucking son of a bitch? I have the responsibility of keeping multiple people alive from having their faces eaten off by undead walking motherfuckers. How many times do I have to get it through your thick fucking skull that I did what I had to do to keep my people surviving? It's not easy, but someone has to fucking do it. Might as well be me. If you let us with your happy pussy question the rules bullshit, we'd be fucking food for the walkers by tomorrow. Survival doesn't care how fucking nice of a person you are. The walkers don't go after assholes and leave the happy fuckers alone. They want to kill you and eat your goddamn body. It's us versus them. There's no time for your namby-pamby bullshit.
Language aside, I actually don't disagree with you. You've made it very clear that any person in charge would have to make some difficult decisions. And yeah, there are going to be casualties. Okay, clearly, I'm an outsider in this, but I want to let you know that from my observation, the circumstance changed from us versus them to us versus us. They were put in the background. I can understand under those circumstances why you view your choices as mere, casualties of war. My thoughts are merely to, reevaluate the battlefield.
You are a fucking outsider. Maybe if you were one of the saviors, you might be useful. I'd find a place for you to help, but you'd be crystal fucking clear about who's in charge and what the goddamn rules are, or you'd be left to fend for yourself. Which means we'd be fucking up your corpse in a day or two after the walkers get done with you.
Point taken, but all right. What if I survived? In fact, what if a whole group of us outside of the Savior survived? By definition, anybody else outside of your organization that survived this long, they had to have something that worked. So I have all the evidence I need that there are other ways to handle the situation besides your rules. At this point, you're having a contest. See which survival group survives better. That's not beneficial. That's just selfish.
Listen, if you want to live by pussy rules, go to Alexandria. I'm sure Rick and his merry band of motherfuckers would be happy to take you in and suck your cock about how amazing you are. And then Rick would realize you're a threat and he'd take you out. Or you can come with us, accept who's in charge, and live a happy fucking life. Or take your chances with those hilltop fuckers. I own Gregory. I slid my right down his throat, and he was fucking grateful for it. Take your pick, Doc. Which group do you want to live with? The one who makes you feel a tingle in your pussy, or the one who keeps the walkers from chomping on your fucking intestines?
Whoa. All right, it sounds like I have a very serious choice to make, but don't worry. I'll weigh the pros and cons of everything and recognize that I do have the ability to change my mind. I mean, unless I join you, of course, because you don't allow for that. Maybe I'll start a faction of my own. Who knows? I'm sorry if I tortured you or made you feel uncomfortable with so many questions. But at this point, I think it's best I leave you here in your cell.
Oh, you thought you had time? You thought this was a hypothetical? You need to make your choice before you leave this fucking cell. Because if you turn your back on me, my people will come. And when they get me out of here, I won't slide my dick down your throat. I'll slide Lucille right up your fucking ass. And you won't thank me for it.
Well, I never said yes to threats, so my answer is mine alone, and I'm definitely leaving now.
Hey, Doc, before you go, one last thing.
What's that?
You. I'm so glad we don't have to deal with the FCC, because they would have a field day with that session.
Well, I mean, as long as we had it on HBO or cable or something.
Yeah, but still, I suppose, yeah, you're right. If it was on HBO, but I mean, he's an angry dude.
Yeah. I wouldn't even try and do that again, to be honest with you. I think we'd have to have that type of cycle of different people like we did with the Joker in that episode.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, there's really not too many characters that would warrant that kind of a skit again, where I go that back and forth. I'll have to figure that out. Maybe another character with dissociative identity disorder.
I hate you so much.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
So that's going to wrap it up. As always, you can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.live. You can listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We are distributed through the Libsyn network, so pretty much all the major platforms you can find us on. If you listen to us in a method that allows you to like and leave a rating, please like and subscribe. Leave us a positive rating and review, and we'll read it on the show. You can also check us out on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. You can email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com. We have a Facebook fan group if you join that, where you can talk and discuss about the episodes with other fans. You can also tweet us. We're very active on Twitter, always looking for new followers. So let's see, what do we got coming up? Next week, one of our patrons, which the other thing we can mention is our Patreon page. We mentioned at the beginning of the episode with Phantom Zone. You can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/capesinthecouch, and you can subscribe at a $1, $3, $5, or $10 level and get various rewards. So please, if you support the show, we definitely appreciate it. We're looking to reach our $50 a month goal. And if we do that, then we will be live streaming our recording sessions, and you can see me and Doc and all the fun we get and get a really behind the scenes look at what goes on before we get all the editing done, and maybe, we'll answer some questions as we're recording. So it'll be a fun way to interact with some of our listeners. Next week, one of our patrons has requested, our patron Brian, our good friend of the show, Brian, has asked that we cover the one, the only Captain America, Steve Rogers.
He's done a few things.
Yeah, just a bit. That one's going to be really interesting to see how long that episode goes for. And then the following week, our other main president level patron, Matt, has asked that we cover Frank Castle, the Punisher. And he said before the show gets canceled, which it probably will soon, maybe even by the time this episode comes out.
Oh, don't be that pessimistic.
Come on, man. Listen, they canceled Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. I mean, Iron Fist should have been canceled, but they canceled Daredevil. What makes you think they're going to save the Punisher and Jessica Jones? The writing is on the wall.
You're right.
They're just waiting they're just biding the time.
Yeah.
And then they'll drop them, and no one will get any sort of explanation, which is a shame, because we just started the second season of Punisher and it's amazing. So, and check that out. And then the following week, we're going to go back to back in prep for the Captain Marvel film coming out, which I am very excited to see. We're going to do Captain Marvel on 2 consecutive weeks. What's that, you say? Well, the first week, in 3 weeks, we'll do Carol Danvers. And then the following week, we'll do Monica Rambeau, a.k.a. Photon, the leader of Next Wave, which really any opportunity I get to talk about Next Wave is a good one, because Next Wave is just, it's amazing. All and right. Dare I say it's even amazing. I'm sorry. There was one last one I had to get out. It's the Negan. He popped into my head. So Doc, before we head out, anything you want to add?
So often, including in my life, we ask people why the anger. I think we could do an even greater service by asking why the pain.
Wow. Okay. You just got raw and serious on us. I don't even have anything snarky to say.
That's okay. You got it out with Negan.
That's true. I did. Well, hopefully you are not suffering any pain right now. And if you are, please seek help. If you don't know who to turn to, you can contact us and we will direct you to a mental health professional that can assist you. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.